The day my wealthy grandmother found me and my 6-year-old daughter outside a family shelter changed everything I thought I knew about my family. We had spent weeks struggling after my parents forced us out of their apartment with almost no warning. I had been working long shifts as a nursing assistant, trying everything possible to save enough money for a place of our own, but rising rent and constant rejection left us with nowhere to go. Every morning I tried to smile for my daughter, Emily, even though I felt like my entire life was falling apart. Living in the shelter was heartbreaking, but I refused to let my daughter lose hope. She never complained, even when she wore mismatched clothes or asked innocent questions about when we would finally have a real home again. One freezing morning, while we waited outside for her school bus, a black luxury sedan pulled up beside us. My grandmother, Eleanor, stepped out. She had been traveling overseas for months and had no idea what had happened. After seeing the shelter sign, she looked at me in complete disbelief before asking one question that changed everything. "Why are you not living in your house on Hawthorne Street?" I stared at her in confusion, because I had never heard of any house. My grandmother immediately realized something was terribly wrong. She asked us to get into her car and began making phone calls. Within minutes, she learned that a house she had secretly purchased for me and my daughter had already been occupied. Someone else had the keys and rent had been collected from the property for months. As I listened to her conversations, I realized this was far bigger than a misunderstanding. Someone in my own family had stolen the future that had been meant for. Months earlier, I had moved in with my parents after financial problems made it impossible to keep my apartment. They promised it would only be temporary and assured me they wanted to help. At first, everything seemed normal, but slowly their kindness turned into constant criticism. They complained about everything I did, blamed me for working too much, and constantly reminded me that I was becoming a burden. One evening, they announced that I had 30 days to move out. I desperately searched for apartments, but every application was rejected because I could not afford the deposits. Before those 30 days even ended, I returned home after a late hospital shift and found all my belongings sitting outside the apartment door. My parents had locked us out without warning. My little daughter was asleep near the entrance, waiting for me to pick her up. They simply told me it was time to become independent before shutting the door in my face. That night, we slept in my car, and after several exhausting days, we eventually entered a family shelter because we had nowhere else to go. My grandmother had trusted my parents to give me the house she had purchased, believing they would help us start over. Instead, they secretly rented the property to strangers and collected every payment themselves while telling my grandmother that I was happily living there. They even lied whenever she asked about me, making her believe everything was perfect. Discovering the truth filled my grandmother with quiet determination instead of anger. She moved us into a comfortable hotel while she gathered every piece of evidence. 3 days later, she invited me to a large family gathering hosted by my parents. They smiled confidently until they saw my grandmother walk into the room carrying documents and accompanied by her attorney. In front of every relative, she calmly revealed the complete truth. She displayed records showing that the house belonged to me, that my parents had taken possession of it, rented it out without permission, and secretly collected every dollar of rental income. The room fell completely silent as the evidence appeared one page after another. My parents desperately tried to defend themselves, claiming they planned to tell me eventually and insisting they only needed the money for a short time. No one believed them. My grandmother announced that she was cutting them off financially forever, removing them from her inheritance, and cooperating fully with the legal investigation. When my mother begged me to forgive them because we were family, I quietly answered that they should have remembered we were family before turning my daughter's home into a business. Soon afterward, my daughter and I finally moved into the beautiful house on Hawthorne Street that had always been meant for us. She decorated her own bedroom, made new friends, and finally felt safe again. I continued working while studying to become a registered nurse, building a future instead of simply surviving. My grandmother became a constant part of our lives, visiting every week and making sure no one could ever steal our security again. My parents were forced to repay the money they had taken, their reputation collapsed, and their hidden debts eventually caught up with them. Looking back, I realized the greatest gift my grandmother gave me was not the house itself. She gave me proof that real family protects you, while those who betray your trust eventually face the truth they tried so hard to hide.